Welcome to While We Were Distracted, the podcast where we explore topics that often get overshadowed in the rush of daily life.
Today, we're doing a deep dive into a violent online phenomenon that the FBI is calling the #1 digital threat against kids.
And not just that, they're also calling it modern-day terrorism in America.
Exactly. It's a network that you probably haven't even heard of, but authorities believe it has already infected the lives of thousands of kids. It's known only as 764.
And that word terrorism is really the absolute crux of what we're digging into today. We're pulling from FBI reports, from court documents, and a lot of news investigations to understand not just the horrifying methods of 764, but the extreme ideology that drives it.
Right.
This network, according to the Department of Justice, is actively trying to sow chaos and destroy civilized society.
So our goal here is to really synthesize all this frightening material into something you can use, into actionable knowledge. What is 764? Why is it so effective? And why are so many American families still in the dark about it?
Well, to start, let's just look at the name itself, 764.
Yeah, it sounds like some kind of military code name.
It does, but it's actually strangely pedestrian. It's just the first 3 digits of the Texas ZIP code Stephenville, where the network's founder lived.
And the founder, this is where the story takes its first really surreal turn. The sources all confirm 764 was started back in 2021, right in the middle of the pandemic.
Peak isolation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it was started by a 15-year-old school dropout named Bradley Cadenhead. It's just so hard to wrap your mind around a global threat being launched by a teenager.
And yet, he was convicted. He's now serving an 80-year prison sentence in Texas.
Wow.
What's really fascinating here is that the network grew so fast because of that dynamic, the founder's own vulnerability, which then curdled into this extreme sadism. But, before we get into the structure, we have to talk about the ideology.
Yeah.
Because 764 isn't really one single organized group. It's more of an ideology that's wrapped in a loosely knit network.
Okay, so let's unpack that ideology. When the FBI calls this a nihilistic, violent extremist network, what does that actually mean in practical terms? It sounds so academic for a group started by a kid.
It sounds academic, but it's necessary context. When we say nihilistic, we mean they believe that life has no value. They embrace violence and destruction just for the sake of it.
All right.
It's driven by a deep misanthropy, a hatred of humanity. And the operational goal for all of that hatred is a concept called accelerationism.
Accelerationism, right? You hear that term thrown around a lot with domestic extremism.
Yeah.
How does that connect to grooming and exploiting kids?
It connects directly. Accelerationists want to speed up the collapse of society, of government, because they think it's all corrupt and needs to be destroyed.
So they can build something new from the ashes.
Exactly. But in the context of 764, they know they can't go out and blow up a building every day. So they target the most vulnerable part of society, children, and they use sexual exploitation and trauma as weapons of mass psychological destruction.
So you're saying it reframes child exploitation entirely. It's not just a crime of opportunity anymore.
It's a political strategy. By corrupting minors, they shatter families, they destroy trust in online platforms, and they overwhelm law enforcement. All of that furthers their goal of destabilizing society.
And the scope of this network suggests that strategy is, worryingly effective? How big is this thing?
It is massive, and it is absolutely expanding. Experts estimate that as many as 10,000 people globally are actively engaged in 764 and its related networks.
10,000?
Yeah. And just in May of 2025, the FBI was already conducting 250 separate investigations tied to 764 across the U.S.
Wow.
And since then, they've opened at least 100 more. This is not some small group in a few basement chat rooms. It's a decentralized global movement.
So with that scale, how is law enforcement even supposed to track it?
Well, that's the challenge. 764 is now sort of an umbrella term because the groups are constantly evolving. They know about offshoots, subgroups that use the same methods, but they're always changing their names.
To avoid detection.
Right. To evade social media moderation, you see names like CVLT, which suggests a cult, or No Lives Matter, or just sewer groups.
Sewer groups.
Yeah. And when you hear about the whole aggregated network, the people in it just call themselves the COM.
The COM, short for the community.
Right.
And the sources note that members will often mix in this really toxic blend of other extreme views. We're talking neo-Nazism, Satanism, even ISIS-inspired terrorism.
Yeah.
Why? Why bring those in?
It's a tool. It's all about desensitization and loyalty testing, not necessarily a genuine belief in all those things at once.
I see.
Forcing a victim to, say, cut a swastika into their skin, it serves a few purposes. First, it maximizes shock value. Second, it desensitizes them, so the next deep, craved demand seems less shocking. And third, all those ideologies glorify violence and collapse, which mirrors their main accelerationist goals.
And they glorify real-world attacks.
Oh, absolutely. They explicitly glorify things like Columbine and Sandy Hook as like proof of concept for their mission.
Let's talk about the methods of exploitation, because the way the network weaponizes grooming is, frankly, terrifyingly strategic. Who are they targeting?
They go after vulnerable minors, usually between 9 and 17. But it's not random. They seek out kids who are already struggling, dealing with mental health issues from marginalized backgrounds or members of the LGBTQ plus community.
So they're looking for that isolation.
They're looking for isolation and the need for connection, and they turn that vulnerability into leverage.
And the capture mechanism is just ruthless. They befriend victims on platforms like Discord, Telegram, but also places you'd never expect.
Right, like gaming sites, Roblox, Minecraft.
And then they build trust, and then they blackmail them using intimate images or private information they threaten to leak. But this goes way beyond traditional blackmail for money, doesn't it?
Yes. The goal isn't profit, it's sadism and chaos. A prosecutor basically summarized the demands as the more extreme, the better.
And this brings us to probably the most horrifying part of it all.
The self-mutilation. Victims are coerced, often live on camera, into mutilating themselves. They're forced to carve the abuser's name or the numbers 764 right into their bodies.
An act they call cut signing.
Cut signing or fan signing, yeah.
That act of branding, of forcing a victim to physically embody the network's name. It feels like such a strategic move to just destroy any sense of self.
Absolutely. It's permanent proof of their submission. It fulfills that misanthropic goal of dehumanization. And the cruelty doesn't stop there. It extends to animal torture.
I saw that in the court documents.
Yeah, the disturbing allegations against Baron Martin, the alleged king of extortion. He coerced a 13-year-old girl overseas to stomp on her hamster's head and feed it to her dog, and he broadcast the whole thing live.
It's about maximizing depravity for the entertainment of the calm.
That's it.
And tragically, the ultimate demand can be self-harm or even suicide. We have to talk about the case of 13-year-old Jay Taylor. His mother said her son live-streamed his own suicide after being pushed by 764 members.
And the scale of that kind of coercion is just staggering. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children reported 1,000 abuse reports tied to 764.
1,000.
In just the first 6 months of 2025 alone, it's a deliberate and, frankly, successful strategy to induce extreme trauma in the youngest generation. And when you connect that back to the FBI's classification, you start to see why they're treating this as a counterterrorism issue.
Right. This is where the federal response gets really unique. The Justice Department's National Security Division and the FBI's Counterterrorism Division are leading these investigations. What does that tell us when the government views this through a national security lens?
It tells us they view the intent of these people as political, not just the act. They are using the full weight of counterterrorism tools because the network's purpose is ideological warfare.
And we have a prime example of that right now.
We do. The recent terrorism charge leveled against Baron Martin. This Arizona native is facing 29 charges, including conspiring to provide material support to terrorists.
That's astonishing, conspiring to provide material to terrorists.
Exactly. Martin allegedly created and spread these guides for grooming and manipulation within the network. His charges also include murder for hire.
Murder for hire.
Yes, he allegedly tried to pay someone $3,000 to kill one of his victim's grandmothers. This just shows how seamlessly these 764 members can move from digital manipulation to planning real-world violence.
And we're seeing other serious judicial action, too. There's the case of Richard Densmore, or Rabbit.
Right. Sentenced to 30 years in Michigan. He was recruiting through those Discord seer communities.
Or the 21-year-old in New Jersey, recently arrested for blackmail, but he was also planning ISIS-style attacks. He was stockpiling body armor, zip ties, bomb-making books.
And you can see the network's influence bleeding into these high-profile tragedies. The Nashville school shooter, Solomon Henderson, he was 17.
He left a diary.
He did.
Yeah.
And it had images explicitly tied to 764. He wrote about wanting to do a stabbing like Tubbs.
And Tubbs was a 764 member in Romania.
A notorious one. He tattooed 764 on his arm, and then in 2022, he live-streamed himself fatally stabbing an elderly woman. The digital rhetoric is fueling lethal real-world attacks.
But even with this aggressive response from law enforcement, the sources say there are huge challenges to dismantling this network. What are the main hurdles?
Well, one big one is jurisdiction. The network is global, and some foreign governments just resist U.S. efforts to extradite their citizens.
Right.
But the biggest challenge is internal. U.S. federal law makes it really hard to prosecute the perpetrators who are minors themselves.
Because the network turns victims into abusers.
Exactly. A huge percentage of the active membership is under 18. It creates this legal and moral gray area that really slows down prosecution.
So what does this all mean for the listener, especially parents or anyone working with kids? This seems to demand just a radical rethinking of online safety.
It does. It requires a multi-pronged response from tech platforms, from lawmakers, and most critically from parents. On the legislative side, you have things like the Kids Online Safety Act, or KOSA.
KOSA, right. It's designed to make platforms provide safeguards for kids, but there are always those concerns about free speech, the First Amendment.
There are. But COES is trying to regulate the mechanisms 7 and 64 relies on, like algorithms that amplify harmful content. The problem is, even with perfect laws, experts warn that a lot of this happens in very small spaces.
Encrypted chats, private servers.
Exactly. Places that are difficult to monitor. The platforms are just inundated. They can't keep up with all the fallback accounts these predators create.
That really underscores this warning from federal prosecutors. They said parents have a false sense of security because their child is home. They called it a terrible mistake to assume that there is safety in that setting.
Vigilance is the only defense when the network is designed to target isolation. The sources give some very concrete steps. Parents have to be proactive. They have to have those difficult conversations now.
Treating online dangers with the same seriousness as, talking about the birds and the bees.
Precisely. The advice is to keep devices out of kids' bedrooms to remove that unsupervised isolation. Make it a habit to ask your kids to show you their games, their apps.
And use news about groups like 7 and 64 to just start a conversation, not an interrogation.
Right. And finally, look for physical and behavioral signs. The FBI says to look for fresh cuts or scars, especially in unusual patterns, that cut signing, or if your child suddenly starts wearing long sleeves in warm weather. The network thrives on secrecy. Breaking that secrecy is paramount.
So at its core, this deep dive really shows that 764 is using the internet to systematically corrupt society by, as the sources say, going after our children. It's poisoning the very foundations of community and trust.
And that accelerationist intent is why law enforcement is being forced to use the tools of counterterrorism against child abusers. The network's entire effectiveness relies on exploiting vulnerability and isolation. And that isolation, well, it brings us right back to where we started.
Which leads to this final, really provocative thought for you to consider. The founder of 764, Bradley Cadenhead, the kid who launched this global terror network. A classmate described him as an easy target.
Someone who is bullied and deeply isolated himself.
Exactly. So if the goal of 764 is to dismantle society by targeting the vulnerable, what responsibility does the community, our actual physical communities, our schools, our neighborhoods, what responsibility do we bear in recognizing and mitigating the very isolation that makes young people so dangerously susceptible to the destructive promises of these groups in the first place?
Don't forget to like and subscribe for the next episode on While We Were Distracted.